Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more buckshot slash predator testing. And today we've got a combination out here that a number of you guys have really wanted to see us try, and I definitely want to see what it can do as well, because there's a chance that it performs really nicely, but there's also a chance that this shell with this choke is just absolutely going to be a terrible performer as well. The combination of the two could just absolutely ruin the pattern. So I'm definitely curious to see how well they actually work out together. But for the shell I've brought out here today, I got out some of these. The Hornady Varmint Express shells. They are a 12 gauge, 2 3/4 inch, 24 pellet load of 4 buck, moving about 1,350 feet per second. And we have tested these shells a couple of times so far on the channel with some pretty decent results. Nothing groundbreaking from what I can remember, but they've been pretty solid. The big question for today is this Versatite wad that you see down here on the corner of the box. If you don't know, the Hornady Versatite wad is essentially just a flight control wad like Federal uses. They are pretty much identical. So that is going to be the big determining factor, I think, more than anything else today, is how 4 buck in a Versatite wad is going to actually work through this particular choke. So we'll see what happens. And as for the setup we've got to run them through today, I brought out my Remington 870 Special Purpose with a 24-inch barrel, and I threw in this choke, which is the Carlson's Coyote choke, and there's no mention anywhere on Carlson's website or the packaging or the choke or anything as to what constriction this is. So I did measure it, and it comes out to be, believe it or not, a 665 constriction choke. And they're claiming to see their best patterns from BB, T-shot, and 4 buck out to 70 yards, even though it is a 665. But there's really nothing special about it. It does have a couple small ports on the side here, but nothing else. And this choke, and the couple times we've tested it so far, has been a little bit hit or miss. Some things it works pretty good with, other things it doesn't. So I'm really curious to see how it does with 4 buck in a Versatite wad through a 665 constriction. It might work out great, it might be terrible. I really don't know. But as for today's test, everything is set up the same as usual. I've got the big sheet of paper at 40 yards. I've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity from the shell, and I've got the template so we can lay up over our results when we go check out what kind of pattern we got. So let's get you guys to view this target and take this shot and see just what the Varmint Express 4 buck shells can do through the Carlson's Coyote choke. It might work out great, it might completely ruin the pattern. So let's go take our shot and see what we get. Alright, so that round gave us 14-14 through the chrono. The boss claim is 1350, so we're definitely moving on out, especially for having a 24-inch barrel. However, we have been seeing above the 1400 feet per second mark when we've tested these shells previously, so I really don't think there's anything too abnormal going on here based on what we had previously been seeing from them. So yeah, 1400 feet per second is definitely moving on out for a 4 buck shell. But what kind of a pattern did we get down at 40 yards, and did this combination actually work out for us or not? Let's go check it out and see what we got. All right, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. And it's pretty interesting because it kind of is borderline on both sides here. Now, for a quick reference, the white dot was my point of aim. The paper is 36 inches wide by about 44 inches tall. And I definitely hit a little bit low. I do believe that was probably me more than anything else. But we had 21 out of the 24 pellets on the actual paper here. And if I was to just walk up and show you this bottom section of the pattern down here, it would look pretty decent. I mean, that's a pretty condensed spread of 4 buck right there. But then we noticed this big old string off to the left up there. So that tells me that we are probably right on the limit, if not just a little bit over it, as far as constriction with these Varmint Express 4 buck shells. We had the makings of a really nice condensed hot pattern down there just below that white dot, but the edges definitely flared out. And more than likely, the 3 pellets that we're missing are probably off the left where that string is. So on one hand, we had a pretty nice pattern going on down there, but on the other side, we definitely had some flyers and strings going on as well. So kind of a mix on both sides here. But overall, I mean, it could have been way worse considering what the shell is and putting it through that constriction. I just think that 665, regardless of what wad is in the shell, and based on what we've seen testing that choke with other 4 buck shells, I just think it's a little bit over the top as far as constriction goes for a 4 buck pellet. But let's throw a couple templates up and get a little bit better of a reference as to how they actually did. All right, so here's our 10-inch circle, and we'll give it the benefit of the doubt and put it where our hottest core area is. And if we do that, we had 7 of the 24 pellets actually in the 10-inch circle. So not terrible, not great, nothing amazing, but it would do the job. So now let's swap over to some actual animal templates and see how this pattern would look in an actual hunting type of scenario as well. All right, so we'll start off here real quick with a deer template. Now, I know this is technically probably more of a predator combination than a deer combo, and I know not everybody uses 4-buck for deer, but for those of you that would be looking at this for a deer hunting combo, this is what you would be looking at. And you would have had somewhere in the ballpark of 15 pellets that would have actually hit the deer. So yeah, definitely a very dead deer out to 40 yards with that kind of a pattern. But you can see that it's a little bit spread out as well, and considering that we only have 15 out of the 24 pellets in the shell that actually hit the deer, we're definitely missing a few, which are probably little strings and flyers off the edge. So not perfect, but still plenty good enough if you wanted to use this combo for a deer hunt as well, it would appear. So let's throw the hog template up now, which might be a little more realistic of an animal and a little bit better size reference for something like a coyote as well. All right, so here's that hog template, and yeah, it's pretty much the same story, really, but it gives us a little bit better of a size reference for something like a coyote, which would be just a touch smaller than this hog template. And yeah, you have plenty of pellets in there to get the job done. The coyote is not going to make it through that kind of a pattern. So at the end of the day here, definitely not a complete failure. We had the makings of a really nice pattern, but I think it's just a touch over the constriction limit for what a 4-buck shell, regardless of if it has a Versatite wad or not, is really going to like. Both times we've tested a 4-buck shell through this choke, it's been pretty much the same story, where we have the makings of something good with some strings and flyers and stuff around the edges, like it's just starting to blow the pattern open. So definitely not perfect as for our results today, but plenty good enough if you wanted to use this combination for a hunt. So definitely not a complete failure. It could have been way worse, but definitely not perfect either, I wouldn't say. All right, and here's that Hornady Versatite wad, and as you can see, it's pretty much just your Federal Flight Control wad with Hornady's name on it. But it looks pretty decent overall. There's nothing stuck down in there, there's no rips or tears, the tail fins opened up exactly how they normally would, and the little fins on the side here are a little bit farther open than what we typically see from these shells, so that may very well have to do with the constriction, but really, there's no bulge in between the flaps, which is what I typically look for if we're over-constricting a Versatite wad or a Federal Flight Control wad. If you're snagging up on something or running too much constriction, the wad will jam into the choke and bulge out right here in between these flaps, and we're not seeing that here. So I don't think we're too constricted to where it's actually going to risk damaging anything, but I think for the pellet size, we are just a little bit over the top. But for the wad, nothing out of the ordinary to see, and it pretty much confirms that we're probably right on the constriction limit here, is what I would think. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about that performance right there? I think it's pretty much somewhere in the middle. We saw the makings of what could have been a really nice pattern, but then we had that big giant string across the side there, and we're still missing 3 pellets on that big sheet of paper. So I think it all just kind of shows signs of being right on the constriction limit, like I've already said several times. 665 is typically a turkey choke constriction, so I think that's probably why we've seen borderline patterns from it so far with 4-buck, but much better patterns with something like a BB shell like last week. But at the end of the day, that would still be a very usable predator pattern out to 40 or 50 yards or so. And you could deer and hog hunt with it as well if you wanted to. So it's not a complete failure, and it could have been way worse. There's no doubt about that. But I guess leave your thoughts in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of the Hornady Varmint Express shells or that Carlson's Coyote choke? And if so, what kind of results have you seen from them? And is there another shell or choke combo that you want to see either these Varmint Express shells or that Carlson's Coyote choke run with? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.